On today's episode of Insights from the Farm, we'll be visiting with agronomist Alan Parrish to talk about Central Illinois and how farmers in that area are leveraging a new mode of action in nitrogen to protect yield potential. We'll also be talking about a farmer in southern Minnesota that saw significant rains in the spring, but still saw a yield advantage from utilizing Proven 40. Stay tuned. Welcome to Insights from the Farm, the podcast where we take a look at real-world scenarios and how Proven 40 is helping farmers to achieve optimal yield potential by adding another mode of action to their nitrogen program. I'm joined as always by the good doctor, Dr. Ryan Van Roekel. Ryan, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me. I think some action is starting in the fields. We're getting folks wrapping up with harvest and starting to think about fall nitrogen applications. Of course, in some areas it's too dry and causing problems, but there's some rain in the forecast that may help some folks out. Hopefully not a little too much rain.
Yeah, latest USDA numbers I saw about 80% plus completed harvest for corn. So we continue to fly through harvest this year.
Oh yeah, folks are getting a lot done really quick. Joining us today, we've got Alan Parrish from Illinois. He's one of our great agronomists and has been doing a ton of work in the field. I don't know anybody that spends any more time looking at side-by-sides and tracking down data. And so, Alan, could you give us a brief overview about your process? I think you're following these fields all the way through the year. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I really try to get out to the field as much as I can, from planting to harvest. And, I try to track down growers who have side-by-sides out there because it's a learning process, not just for them, but for me as well. Every year is a little bit different, and seeing what our product does and how it performs very consistently during that vegetative phase, then we have to start to understand, well, what's the impacts of everything else that's happening. So as growers incorporate Proven 40 into their program, they can have that consistent results at the end of the season, or understand how they can get more bang for their buck out of the other things that they're doing. And so this is to me where, we do our end season nitrogen test, and then ultimately growers always ask, well, I'm going to wait to see how it yields. And that's to me where doing a bunch of ear sampling really allows me to help understand a little bit more than just what our product's doing, but, how do we get more out of everything else going with it?
That's great, Alan. I love your approach here, and the same way. A lot of our agronomists and Pivot Bio has a long legacy of in-season nitrogen measurements. But same as you, I love looking at ears and taking it to the next step. So I think you've been doing this for several years now, and you've found some really interesting insights in when looking at all the summary data. What do you got to show from all these field walks?
Yeah, so over the last really 2 years, where I think I fine-tuned this process, I've sampled over 4,000 ears. I've got a little data from some other agronomists too. I obviously had some great help from my other people in my sales team helping me collect this data, because it's a lot of work. But when we really look at the ears and what it can tell us, to me, that's how we start to help customers understand what it's doing and how it's working. And so one of the key things that I'm doing in this, process is I'm doing stand counts, and then I'm also shelling the ears for grain moisture content, so I can then, figure out what the grain weights are. So those are two of the easiest data points to probably talk about right now at beginning. Obviously, as we dig deeper into that, there's a lot more layers to unpack. But when we look at, the first one, stand counts, super easy metric to analyze. In the last 2 years, the Proven 40 product, and this is incorporating the LAF stuff with it too, we're not, harming that germination process at all. I mean, I've seen other things out in the field that are impacting germination and stand counts, but I'm simply out there counting every plant that germinates. And again, we're, even on the marginal side of better than the untreated checks.
Yeah, that's a great example there, and I see 414 observations. That's a lot of counting plants.
Yes, and it's actually kind of double that, because I do 2 stand counts on either side. So,
every now and then you get challenging emergence environment or a lot of other things going on, but I think you and all our agronomists have enough data here now that we can confidently say, Proven 40 treated seed is definitely not hurting your stand. Maybe a little better actually, but let's save that for later.
And then the next slide here is moisture content. It's the first year I was doing this, I wasn't measuring that, but as you hear back rumblings from the reps or insights, hey, we are moving these plants longer, and that's, to me, we see that time and time again when we're doing our in-season nitrogen tests. You're seeing the plants come to tassel quicker than their untreated counterparts, and that's just because, again, we're supplying a daily dose of nitrogen during that vegetative phase. It helps them grow at a more consistent pace. So if we're helping these plants grow more consistently, does that going to, obviously carry over, through the entire life cycle of these plants? And that's, to me, where, doing the moisture content, obviously before a combine starts rolling through the field, most of the stuff is over 20% when I'm measuring it. So you can really kind of see that difference on, the rate of dry down a little bit out there. And again, Proven 40 has been, just slightly helping these plants mature a little bit quicker, which, for growers using this product, hopefully that is an added benefit to them, cost savings on drying. Then even think a little bit more strategically on, hey, maybe what hybrids can I start using this more on? Hey, there's a hybrid right outside my RM range. I'm a little scared to use. It might be too wet. Well, to me, that's something where, using Proven 40 might allow you to start to tap into a different group of hybrid class to improve your ROI and yields at the end of the day. And so to me, this is one of those things just to be aware of.
Yeah, that's some great insights, Alan. And Rick, you might remember we had a picture of some tasseled corn striped in the field. I think it reminded you of your favorite baseball team for a little while there. But this would be the data to back up those observations.
Alan, you've been doing this for a long time, collecting a lot of data, working with a lot of farmers. As you talk to guys that are considering using a product like Proven 40, how do you help to guide them through that experience and to understand that the product's working as intended and really to measure its effectiveness?
First thing I try to do is educate them on how it works and when it's working, so they can start to think a little bit more critically on how to use it and where to fit it into their program. Each nitrogen source and timing is a little bit different and what they do for that crop. And to me, how do we start to get all the nitrogen sources, working in more of a relaying effect than, just kind of fumbling through and hoping, just using more works. And to me, I could see a lot of growers starting to use this product and really dialing in their nitrogen use efficiency, because to me, this product can really show, to me, what the other sources are doing as well. And that's something that I think is really unique about our product, is you get to really see the effectiveness of not just our product, but the effectiveness of the other nitrogen sources as well, and when they show up and when they don't.
So it's really kind of gets back to that concept of using multiple modes of action as part of your fertility program that allows you to mitigate as much risk as possible and make sure that the crop's getting what it needs.
So now we've kind of covered, the whole summary of what I've been seeing. It's always good to have the individual site locations that, again, illustrate these points very effectively. So this one field working with a rep, he had a zero nitrogen spot out there, and then he had his full rated, untreated section, and then he had the 32-pound replacement with the Proven 40 in there. And when we look at and compare our in-season nitrogen tests, the Proven 40 is right in there with the untreated, 3.4% nitrogen advantage. To me, what we would expect to see. And then with that zero nitrogen, we're 9% more, which again, obviously with less nitrogen, you expect it to be performing better.
Alan, you talked about taking a 32-pound reduction there, and you talked earlier about the importance of really looking at your overall fertility program and using multiple modes of action. For this particular grower, where did he pull that 32 pounds from that he replaced with Proven?
So this is a grower who's kind of unique in his nitrogen. He does planter applied nitrogen and then 2 side dress passes. So he replaced the nitrogen from his first pass of side dress, his second nitrogen application. So really when the plant's too small to use it. And so to me, it's just kind of, spinning his wheels literally out in the field. When to me, he's got more than enough nitrogen at the planter and with pivot that he could wait and just do that one pass of side dress a little bit later in the season when the plant's starting that rapid uptake phase and actually will have a higher demand for nitrogen.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I'm curious to see what the ears look like on this now.
Yes. And to me, the ears tell you a lot about, what we can maybe expect with how the field's going to yield. And so, when you look at these ears, and something I see pretty consistently out there with the Proven 40 product is, our ear sets are a lot more consistent in size, ear weights, number of kernels per ear. I mean, you're always going to find something, maybe a little run in it, out there. But, overall, it's the consistency that we see. Now, the next question is, how do we turn that consistency into yield? And that's to me where when you start to analyze a grower's nitrogen program, you really start to see the value of that last season nitrogen pass. So like this customer's last pass of side dress is the last one he's doing. The nitrogen's had the least amount of environmental influence on it, which as we get those timely rains through July and August, really help those ears pack on the extra weight. And so whenever I go in and look at the yield information, this is to me where it's critical to start to understand and look at where those spots of yield environment are the most similar, so we can, again, get a nice, clear set of eyes on, what's really going on out here.
Yeah, I think you've showed me many times we can add more kernels and help prevent some of that tip back abortion. But you're right. There's a few management things we can do to make sure the plant's finished strong, but also the weather has to cooperate. So it's always important to dig into the yield here.
All right. So something I do whenever I evaluate a field for yield is I really like to kind of hone in on several different things, depending on how this grower set up his check strips and the proven trial he has out on his farm. And to me, you really kind of got to focus in on either if he has a single strip out there, evaluating the spots just kind of to the left or right of it, or if the grower has a more of a split planter design, then it's, really kind of tearing that field apart a lot by all the variables, seeding rates, soil types, whatever's in there. And then that way, whenever you compare the yield results, you're really comparing apples to apples and not some of the other variables. To me, corn notoriously is consistently inconsistent. We see this all the time when you look at yield data, from our, seed dealers, test plots. The same hybrid never wins 100% of the time. So we got to understand what that error factor is. And so by drawing a bunch of these little boxes of the field, which can be very time consuming, really lets you evaluate more than just a single pass box that you draw, but it really allows you to look at even that error factor in there. So when I evaluate this field, there's a little bit of a red line right in between the treatments. So I'll just kick out the passes to the left or right of that, especially if the grower's an on-seed customer. You never know which seed he used it first or second. So again, just allowing that planter a little time to clean itself out before you zone in on some yield data. So after I draw these boxes, threw it into Excel spreadsheet and ran the numbers on it, here are the yield results. And so the yield results that we're seeing obviously look great. His replacement strategy was very effective. We see the proven 40 treatments, slightly edging out that untreated check, but they're all within that margin of error, which is what we're shooting for. And even that zero nitrogen plot out there yielded pretty well too, which highlights the value of to me, timely nitrogen applications as well. And then back to the moisture content that we talked about earlier, the proven for you just slightly drier than the untreated, but again, within that margin of error, is all we really can expect.
Yeah, it's great to see, Alan. I appreciate how you dig into the yield maps there and make sure you're making fair comparisons. And of course, it's also always great to see the results there, where on the east side and the west side of that check, we're coming in with the same or better yield by using Proven 40 with that 32-pound nitrogen replacement. So I appreciate you taking the time to dig into this example and all the other ones you're doing that we haven't talked about. And thanks for sharing this with us.
No problem. Glad I could join today, and thank you for your time.
Well, let's move from central Illinois to a bit of a different environment from the 24 growing season, somewhere where moisture was a little bit more impactful and really caused some issues for farmers. And that was in southern Minnesota, Ryan.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, that area just got way too much rain. And we've got an example here from one of our sales reps, Colin Wagner. This is South Central Minnesota, kind of by the Iowa border. And his territory sales manager, Carolyn Zerke, passed along a picture and some examples here. So this is from a customer that uses some manure in the fall, but also applies anhydrous in the spring. And so we had a pretty good amount of nitrogen applied, looking at over 1 pound applied per expected bushel. But unfortunately, it just rained a crazy amount there. They had over 40 inches of rain during the season. A lot of that came in June. And so they had a lot of nitrogen loss. And they were planning on doing a side dress, but it was actually way too wet. They never even got in to do that. And so they did have a nice check lined up where they had proven 40 and an untreated strip, both at the same nitrogen rate. But given the extreme weather, in this case, it's kind of using proven 40 on top or in insurance kind of a thing to make sure they had enough nitrogen. And from the pictures that Carolyn was able to send on, it looks like proven 40 was adding nitrogen. They did need more, even though they applied quite a lot. And so we see bigger, greener plants, bigger ears, less tip back on there showing up later in the year.
Another example of adding an additional mode of action, right? Having that coverage of being able to really have a nitrogen program that has complementary products that are going to protect that yield potential. And ultimately, I think, Ryan, the yield outcome was great here from a proven perspective as well.
Yeah, that's right. In this check, they were able to measure a 12 bushel increase by adding proven 40 there as a third mode of action. And talking to Colin, the sales rep, he said that's actually pretty similar in his area where a lot of his customers just had way too much rain and are getting really nice yield bumps by adding that new mode of action.
Yeah, it's one of the benefits of being able to work with people like Alan, who we talked to earlier, to really assess, hey, where can I enhance my fertility program? How can I protect myself from risk? And how do I use multiple modes of action so that I can insulate myself as much as possible from the things that we can't control, being the weather?
Yeah, the weather is just such a wild card. So as we're sitting here in the fall, looking ahead to 2025, we just have no idea what it's going to be. We went from a really dry 2023 to what started as a really wet 24 and then ended dry again. And so as we look to 25, you just don't know what the weather's going to be. And it's really important to spread out your risk and use multiple different sources of nitrogen. And proven 40 is a great one to supplement with.
The only thing normal for us in agriculture is that it's never normal, right? There really is no normal. Every season is onto its own. And I think, as we've seen how dry it's been here this fall, as we've gone through harvest, that's creating challenges around fall anhydrous applications. And another reason for farmers to really think about working with a nitrogen expert, talking to a Pivot Bio rep about how they can add proven 40 to their fertility plan to protect themselves and optimize yield potential.
Yep, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap another episode of Insights from the Farm. We appreciate you being here, Ryan, and thanks again to our guest, Alan Parrish, agronomist from Illinois, who shared the data that he's been collecting throughout the season. If you'd like to follow along and learn more, don't forget to visit our Harvest landing page, where you can see state-based performance data from farmers just like you that are using Proven 40 to protect yield potential and add another mode of action to their fertility program. You can visit us at www.pivotsprovenit.com to follow along. You can also follow us on social media by searching the hashtag Provenit so that you can see real-time stories from farmers that are utilizing Proven 40 to optimize their nitrogen program. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next week with more insights from the farm.